As you may have heard, there's an election coming up. You want to make certain that you know how to vote and where to vote and what your voting options are. So stay tuned. Voter education, voter engagement, where to vote, how to vote, fraudulent voting, artificial intelligence in voting. I'm so glad Holly and Chris are here today, our city clerks, to talk from Williamston and Lansing, to talk about all that we need to know about voting. Thank you for being with us. You all are super busy right now. There have been so many changes in how people vote. So Chris, tell us a little bit about what's going on with voting.
Well, thank you so much for having us on to talk about this because it's so important. We have had a lot of changes over the last few years here in Michigan. Biggest one is early voting. So now in every statewide and federal election, we have 9 days of early voting available to every voter in Michigan. And that's at least 8 hours on all of those 9 days. And people in Michigan just aren't familiar with it, so there's a lot to learn. It's just like voting on election day at your precinct. You just do it at your convenience during those 9 days. The other part is there are fewer locations generally. So for the city of Lansing, we just have 2 locations that you can go on those 9 days. So it includes 2 Saturdays and 2 Sundays.
Wow.
What could be more convenient than that?
Wow.
We've also got more rights to vote by mail. You can sign up for a permanent mail ballot, which means for every election, you sign up once, and we just mail you the ballot.
No excuse.
No excuse, yeah. You also have the right, if you get that mail ballot, instead of sending it back, you can take it to early voting and cast it there. So that way, you already know you've made your decisions, and you just walk in, sign in, and put your ballot in the tabulator, and you can do the same thing on election day. That's kind of the best of both worlds. You can get that ballot home, do your homework, and then cast it in person, put it in the tabulator.
You know, I had a conversation with one of my colleagues the other day about trying to work with some of these shared ride services to get people out to vote on election day. And as I was talking with him, I was thinking, they don't need to go anywhere on election day. People can vote early. You know, that's that old school thinking, right? That, you know, how do you get people to the polls on election day and all that? You can vote so many different ways. You don't have to wait just until election day. In Williamston, how are you telling people about these changes, Holly?
We really try to push on social media what we're doing and try to educate our voters on, you know, the changes and everything that they're seeing in the media and with all the proposals that have come to pass. It's very confusing for the average voter to know what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. And so I think we're just kind of getting the word out, just letting people know you can come in, you can early vote in person, you can put your ballot in the tabulator. It's way different than it used to be. And so that 9 days, we're really trying to get people engaged in that because it's important for that to be successful and to be, you know, worthwhile because we have to do, you know, all the precincts and everything all over the whole state. And so I think it's important for people to know that this is how it's just like an election day.
Right.
Like you would just walk in, you would get your ballot, and you would put it in the tabulator just like you would on Tuesday.
And weren't there, if memory serves correctly, during the last general election, there were more people voted in that election than in the previous election because of some of these changes?
Yeah, we had a huge turnout. So yeah, that no reason absentee that had been brought about by the 2018 constitutional amendment, you know, and then just the other changes that we've had just really make it so much easier to vote. We have same-day registration. So if you're not registered, or if you are registered but you're registered where you don't live anymore, you can go right up until Election Day and get registered and vote. And we're just doing everything to make it so much easier. If you get that ballot at home, we now have a drop box in every city and township in Michigan.
Wow.
And at least one for every 15,000 people in that
Oh, wow.
community. So if you've got a bigger community, you've got multiple locations that you can take your ballot back to ahead of Election Day and not rely on the post office, because God love them, but they're not perfect. And every once in a while, especially as the election gets closer, we need to remind folks to use those drop boxes so that we make sure we get their ballot.
That's important, because I know during the last general election there were some issues with drop boxes and them not being there for people, and they had to go quite a distance in order to drop their ballots off. There's been some concern about going to the precinct on the day of election and whether or not people might be intimidated, or what are some of the rules around if people who want to wait to the last minute to vote, not the last minute, but the last day, discuss, tradition or whatever. What are some of the rules about what people can and can't do? There can't be any kind of intimidation or any kind of T-shirts or whatever. Yeah.
Right. There's no campaigning allowed within 100 feet of the entrance. So there could be people out there campaigning, handing out literature. But once you get in that 100-foot barrier, no campaign shirts, even for the voters or the people working on elections. And then, we do prohibit intimidation. And depending on where you are, Michigan is a state that has a lot of guns.
Right to carry.
And current law, whether you can have a gun at a polling place does depend on what that polling place is. So if it's a school or a church, you fall under their regulations. Other buildings, you don't necessarily. So, but if anyone were to be in any way intimidating, brandishing a weapon or something like that, we would contact law enforcement, and that would be prevented. So we understand, and we're in communication with our police forces to make sure that that we're able to tackle those things really quickly.
Well, we appreciate that, because particularly older adults and others, sometimes they hear these rumors about the ballots being marked, or they're not going to count, or just whatever. So just knowing that you can vote safely and securely, and you don't have to wait until Election Day. You can vote early. Let's say that you vote early and then you change your mind. Is there anything you can do about the candidate that you voted for? Is there anything you can do?
If you vote early, which means you've already put it in a tabulator, no, that vote is already counted.
Okay.
If you vote by mail and you've already returned your ballot, you have until the second Friday before the election to change your mind, and you would have to sign a spoiled ballot request form and contact your clerk's office. But then after that Friday, the next day is when early voting starts statewide, and the next day is when when larger communities can actually start opening and processing those ballots. So we do have that cutoff if you've already returned it.
So you can actually start counting prior to the.
We can. That's
for the first time.
Too.
For the first time.
Exciting.
Yes, you don't have to wait until midnight or 7 p.m. when the polls close, or 8 p.m. Nice. How do you know your vote counts, Holly? How can you assure people that who they voted for, that vote will count toward that person? What's the integrity of the process?
So if you're wondering, like, is this actually counting the votes in the way I want it to count my votes? The best thing to do is to show up for our testing. We conduct tests on all the machines. They're public. We publish those public tests. People can come out and look and see how it works and count the votes on the chart and everything, and make sure everything lines up perfectly. All those have to pass for us to be able to use that equipment. And that's always, open to everybody. And we always have the locations clearly marked. And we would welcome that, because, we don't usually get a lot of participation in the testing from the public. So I would love for the public to come in and see how it works, and then have some reassurance as to how, the tabulators run the results and everything. I think it would help ease their mind. And honestly, they could work as an election inspector. You can see, behind the scenes how everything is done and all the securities they have to do in order to get everything to count and balance. We have to account for every ballot. We can't just, to pull some ballots out or anything like that. Every single ballot at the end of the night has to be accounted for, whether we've sent it out or it's used or not. I think we've got a lot of safeguards out there to make sure that people know that their ballot is cast correctly.
We have one of my colleagues here, Kathleen Simlar, worked as one of those inspectors, and she said if people saw that, they'd never question the process again. It's so much back and forth, and it's both parties, both sides, having to validate and validate and revalidate. It's quite a process, and that's been proven because how many reviews did we get during the last election? And every single review showed that there was nothing
Right.
wrong with the way that there was no impropriety or anything wrong with the way that people voted here. The election stood up in spite of whatever else you might hear. But artificial intelligence and AI and that kind of technology, digital, that's kind of creeping into people's minds too in terms of the election. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's a kind of a frightening prospect because, I mean, I've worked to make myself the known election expert in the Lansing area.
And you've done a great job
Thank
at that,
you,
by the way.
thank you. But somebody could do a deep fake and put my face or my voice on some kind of a message. So I think the main thing is if you hear something that doesn't seem right, please check it out and go to look for a .gov website. Websites are very regulated in terms of if they have a .gov on it, that is a government entity. So we have our website has a .gov, the state has a .gov, and that's where you're going to make sure that you get your accurate information. If anything seems too outlandish to believe, it's possible that it is.
I here at AARP, Michigan, we're now creating an avatar that will answer questions about people and their where they can vote, how they can vote, and all. Not how to vote, but where they can vote and ways they can vote. And we've had like our legal department, everybody within the organization almost signing off on those safeguards because just giving out information, like you were saying, how people can take your voice, take your image, and use it for evil or you use it for no good is a little bit concerning. And so knowing that you're paying attention to that is helpful, that the Secretary of State and the others are paying attention to all that intelligence that's out there that could really distort a true election with integrity. So appreciate that. Talk, if you would, about signatures. There was some talk at one time about how you verify signatures on the back of the ballot and putting in Social Security numbers, which you can't do in the last 4 digits, which none of that, people should not put any additional information like that anywhere on their application.
Right. On your ballot, you should only mark the candidates. So
Right.
you actually shouldn't identify the ballot itself as your own because that's actually one of our security measures isn't having that secret ballot. It's also your constitutional protection to have that secret ballot. But on the envelope, we do require your signature if you're voting by mail. And we compare that against the signature we have on file, which 98% of the time in Michigan is your driver's license signature. And we do have, spouses sign, they think they're allowed to sign their spouse's envelope. They're not. So we have steps in place to contact anyone whose signature we question, and we do question. Every election we have signatures that we question, and we have steps in place. But sometimes, we understand that it could be a medical issue. People have permanent or temporary things that can
Tremors,
impact.
Parkinson's, yeah.
They could have a broken arm and be writing with their wrong hand for a few months. So we do have an opportunity to provide some cures. And in fact, that's one of the newer things, is that if you have a signature problem on an absentee ballot, you have until the Friday after the election to cure that and have your ballot added to the totals.
Friday after the election. Wow. So when is the election actually certified? At what point in time do we say this is it? What's that?
It's at least a week after.
Okay.
Because we have the signature cure period now. We also, voters who are living overseas or are active military in their family have special voting rights. And one of those special voting rights is if their ballot is postmarked by Election Day, we can accept it up to the Monday after the election. So we have to give time for those ballots to come in. And a bigger election can take
little
longer too.
What keeps you up at night, Holly, regarding the election in Williamston? What concerns you?
It's usually the little details. You gotta remember, did I publish this? Did I, order coffee? Did I, I have to take care of my election inspectors. Do I have enough for these days? We're always, there are so many little details that we have to get through. And, I think, oh, we could do this for, safety measures. We could put this in place and make people feel safer. Or it's just, it is the little details that really do keep you up at night. And honestly, I will get up in the middle of the night and email my deputy, like, don't forget we got to do this on Monday or something. And or I'll have to go check on something immediately. So there's a lot of little things that do keep you up at night, and I don't know how clerks sleep in a couple of months leading up to election day. But it's definitely a daunting process, and it's a heavy burden to carry all of the little details that go into just having any election. That's why we always love it when people will come out and vote, because it makes it all worth it.
Right.
That we've stayed up those nights and worried about the voting, and when people turn up for it, okay, that was worth it.
Right. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
good voter turnout is always the goal.
Absolutely. What about you? What keeps you up at night?
Kind of the same things. There's so many things that can go wrong from, some of the things that have happened would keep me up at night if I think about it.
Yes.
One time we had a precinct, they went into the church, and then they forgot something in their car, so they walked out, and they hadn't unlocked the door, and they left the keys inside. Oh. So we had like 15 minutes to pitch a tent and set up, just a standby voting until we could get into the building,
My.
But we were ready to go by 7 a.m.
All right. Do you need precinct workers? I mean, do you have enough? Are you finding people, inspectors? Are you finding that you have the pool that you need?
Between, people volunteering a lot this year and the state lists that they keep, we are finding a good amount. I know other clerks struggle because you have to have it even, you have to have two political parties and equal amounts of those. And so sometimes you can have one of more than the other. So
right.
sometimes we just swap around and everything and say, oh, I need this, or I have too many of these. Do you guys need more? People are stepping up though, and we appreciate that. And it is great. You get trained. We usually have food.
Their coffee.
Yep. They get paid to do it. They can see how the whole process works. We're very thankful to have our election inspectors, because without them, we don't have a process at all. So it would be great to have more.
How about you?
It's always to be more.
We're always looking for more, and to Holly's point, we have to have a balance of Democrats and Republicans as much as we can, and people like to work close to where they live, and certain communities are more leaning one direction or the other. So it's always good to have that mix. At the City of Lansing, we're always struggling to find Republican workers enough to balance it out. And also, we've got different skills that we need. We need, each precinct has a chair, so you need somebody with leadership skills. We now use computers to check people in. It's not the old paper list where you're highlighting folks. So you need people with computer skills. And you need people with people skills too. You can't have somebody who makes voters feel uncomfortable when they walk in. So there's a lot of things we have to look for, and always happy to have a bigger pool. And the bigger election, the more people we need, just because there's more voters coming through the door.
We've got about a minute and a half left. Let's talk about registering to vote and the process. What's the deadline? You said right up until the day of, or what's the deadline? Because I understand there's more people registering to vote than ever before.
Yes, yeah. So
good.
We've passed 90,000 registered voters in the City of Lansing for the first time, I think, since I've been clerk.
Wow.
So you can, up to 14 days before the election, you can register at the Secretary of State branch office. If you have a Michigan ID or driver's license, you can actually register online at the state website, or you can fill out a paper form and mail it in. Or there's people out at events circulating them. In that last 14 days, you have to go to your clerk's office, wherever whatever city or township you're in, with evidence of where you live, and preferably with photo ID if you have it. And we can get you registered right away.
How exciting. So more important than anything else, people just need to make certain that they vote. They register to vote. It's exciting. I love it. I mean, you know, we think about going to the polls because there's such a history behind, particularly for women and people of color, the history behind voting, and you get to have your voice heard, you know, whether it goes your way or not. So it's a very exciting time. Appreciate so much all that you do. Our hearts and prayers and thoughts go out to you on election day. We know it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it, and you're doing it really well. Thank you so much for being with us, Holly and Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As a normal and natural part of aging, hair loss can occur. Usually that's slow and progressive, and we refer to that as male or female pattern hair loss. Other things aside from the natural aging process can affect hair loss. So genetics is one of those things. Whatever runs in your family can apply to you and influence that hair loss as well. Other things which are a little bit more outside of our control potentially, but with also the potential to be fixed or improved upon, include diet, poor diet, sleep or poor sleep, sleep deprivation, trauma, injury, even emotional stress. Those conditions can be temporary or can be fixed or improved upon, but they can also influence hair loss, hair growth as well. On top of that, additional factors that are potentially more complicated, medications that you're on, autoimmune diseases, inflammation, other disease processes, even COVID can play a part in your hair loss or hair growth patterns. Again, these can be fixed, improved upon. Definitely need to talk to your medical provider about this. Overall, the overarching theme is stress. Stress takes a toll on your body. Anytime your body encounters stress, it uses your resources, energy, nutrients to try to alleviate or heal that stress. So whether you're sleep deprived, you're poor nutrition, your energy goes towards that. And that robs your body, including your hair cells and brain cells, whatever cells, of those nutrients, energy, and resources. So it's important if you see hair loss, that's an indication to talk to your medical provider about what's going on in your body. That's also influencing your hair, because there might be more than aging that's going on.
So you want to ride the CATA bus? Well, let's talk to Lolo and see what the options are. Hi, thank you again for being with us. If someone wants to ride and they have a particular schedule, ride the bus, or Spectrum, and they have a particular schedule, will the CATA show up on time? Will the vehicle show up on time? And will it get them to their appointment on time? How reliable is CATA?
We are actually very reliable, whether you're talking about our fixed route system or our paratransit services. We're not perfect, of course, and there are external factors that could impact our ability to remain on time. So we always ask passengers to think ahead, and if it's really critical, an appointment or getting to class on time, maybe take the scheduled service before, ahead of time, so that they arrive on time and they don't miss out on opportunities.
Just like anyone else, a car or anyone else driving, I'm sure CATA runs into traffic issues and construction issues and road issues and everything else, right?
Absolutely. Trains, going by, and the train guards coming down and waiting in traffic.
But 80 to 90% on-time reliability is pretty daggone good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. So if people want to schedule that service, then they would have to call how far in advance?
2 weeks in advance at the most,
Okay.
but also 1 day in advance. And with some services, it's a 30-minute lead time.
Great. Now, will CATA wait for them? Like if they have a doctor's appointment, or do they just have to schedule a time to be picked up?
They do need to schedule a time for pickup, but we are doing wait stop trips as well. So if you need to maybe run to the bank before your appointment, you can do that. We do have a small window within which you have to conduct your business and get right back on that vehicle.
So you can't just ride around all day?
No, you can't just ride around all day. There's a huge demand for our services.
Absolutely. Well, it's a nice ride if you could do that. So thank you so much for that
Thank
information. Appreciate you being here. You've got a great story to tell, but I'm going to ask you a question. Why do we keep doing the same thing over and over? Why are we creatures of habit?
Right. Well, I guess that's the way we're made, right? But sometimes we really have to examine why it is we're doing the things we're doing. So I call it the pot roast story. My mom tells this story, how she would always cut the end off. When she and Dad got married, she would always cut the end off the pot roast, you know, before she put it in the oven. And Dad was always like, well, Betty, why are you doing that? Well, then my grandmother moved in with us. And there were 11 of us in a little house, 8 kids, Mom, Dad, and my grandmother, my Irish grandmother. And Dad finally asked her, he said, Mary, you know, my Nana, Betty always cuts the end off the pot roast. What's up with that? You know, why do you do that? And she said, well, we asked, you know, my mom, and Mom said, well, I do it because you do it. Yeah. You did it. And she's like, oh, I know. It's because during World War II, you know, we had just a teeny tiny apartment with a teeny tiny oven. And I had to cut the end off the pot roast in order to fit it in the oven. So for years after, 20 years, you know, my mom's cutting the end off the pot roast for no good reason. But her mom did it, it was good enough for her. So sometimes it might be a good idea to re-examine why is it we're doing certain things. So you go to a so-called estate planning attorney and they say, oh, you need a will, just a will. Maybe you need more. Maybe you need to be thinking about long-term care. It might work out better for you.
And you also need to communicate, right?
Communication is key.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Paul.
We talk a lot about direct care workers and making certain that people get into the workforce, but there's an economic impact that's attached to direct care workers for businesses, for individuals, for families. Dr. Lutz, thank you so much for being with us today to talk about that.
Thanks for this opportunity. And thank you for raising that point, because it's not just about this shortage of direct care workers affecting the people receiving services or the families that love them. This issue has a huge impact on all of us, every one of us, individually and collectively. It affects our economy. It affects our many, many businesses. We have direct care worker or agencies trying to help people, home health care agencies, for example, that are shutting down, that are shuttering their doors and turning people away because they don't have enough direct care workers. Even the private sector is losing productivity because many of their staff are family caregivers who need help, right, and have to adjust their schedules and even leave work because they can't juggle both roles. So it's really important to all of us, and we have to pull together. We have to work with the legislators. It's important to have some policy reforms that will really support making sure that direct care workers have economic security and respect.
And that's so critical. People need to get involved. You know, either you are a caregiver, or you're going to be a caregiver, or you're going to need a caregiver.
Absolutely.
And it impacts the economy, everything. So how do people get involved?
People can get involved in many, many different ways. First of all, learn about direct care workers, who they are, what they do, why there's a shortage. You can contact MSU Impart Alliance, go to our website. We have a lot of information there. You can learn about the statewide activities that are happening. There's so much happening. Join our coalition.
Yeah, there you go.
And get involved.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate all that you do.
Thank you for the chance.
There was a lot of information shared today. Hopefully you will share this information with someone else and keep watching AARP Real Possibilities.